Welcome back. You're watching Gravitas. This morning saw the demise of India's truly versatile and international actor, Om Puri. He died due to a sudden cardiac arrest. He was one of the biggest names of Bollywood who straddled both art and commercial cinema with equal ease and conviction. Let's reflect at his stellar journey.
Om Puri was a versatile actor with countless memorable performances. A star who not only dazzled the Indian screens but also made a strong foothold in international cinema. An actor who gambled with the unconventional path of parallel cinema to attain stardom. India lost one of its finest stars with Om Puri bidding adieu to the world at the age of 66. The veteran actor passed away after a massive heart attack early on Friday morning. Born on October 18, 1950 in Ambala, Haryana to a railway officer, Om Puri continued his tryst with acting and studied at the Film and Television Institute of India in Pune. He was an alumnus of the National School of Drama, where he studied in 1973 with veteran actor Nasiruddin Shah. Puri made his film debut in 1976 with Marathi film Gashiram Kotwal, based on a Marathi play of the same name. The actor rose to fame with films like Ard Satya, Akrosh and Par, and went on to receive the National Award for Ard Satya in 1983. His popularity later extended to mainstream cinema with iconic roles in films like Jaane Bhi Do Yaro and Matches.
40 साल से ऊपर हो गया आजादी मिले हुए आधी सदी half a century कब तक चाहते हैं इंतजार करें.
He was married to Nandita Puri in the year 1993 and separated in 2013. Puri's stellar career performances not only stuck to India but also brought out the magic of his acting on the international platform. In 1999, Puri starred in the indie-UK hit East is East, directed by Damien O'Donnell.
Hey, stop looking!
By then, Puri was a well-known name in the international market, thanks to his outstanding performances in Gandhi, My Son the Fanatic, Jewel in the Crown and City of Joy. Recently, Puri also starred in the international film The 100-Foot Journey with legendary British actress Helen Mirren. Being a showbiz favourite has its own repercussions, and Puri was not untouched by them. He was often embroiled in controversies. The recent one that brought him under scanner was his support to banning Pakistani artists from working in India. Om Puri's last work is Gurinder Chaddha's British-Indian historical drama The Viceroy's House, slated to release in March this year.
And what a fantastic journey Om Puri had. To applaud Om Puri's career and to discuss what he meant to the Indian and indeed world cinema, we're joined by Kabir Bedi, who's an even bigger name, and Shojit Sarkar, a filmmaker. Kabir, let me come to you first. You worked with him closely. I'm told he was a good friend of yours as well. Explain to us the man he was.
You know, Om Puri and I shared a great bond, and it wasn't an acting bond, because that was there, of course. It was the bond of Punjabiness. Whenever we got together, there was always a big jappi, always a sense of meeting a long-lost brother. And I applauded Om because he was such a human person with all his failings. He had a fondness for the bottle, and we had our best conversations, and both of us were a little tiddled. But Om had a versatility that is really awesome. When you see an Om, say in Tamas or Ard Satya, and then you see Jaane Bhi Do Yaro, you realize what an incredible contrast there is and range there is in this extraordinary actor. And of course, you know, both of us have acted in international films. And I really saluted the fact that Om did so many wonderful quality productions abroad, which is very unusual for an Indian actor based in Bollywood. And I think Om was able to bridge that divide well. I think he was respected as an actor and as a person you could embrace when you met him. I have the fondest memories of Om, and I feel that I've lost something very personal in his passing.
Yeah, well, our condolences, Kabir, for that. But for someone who has done so many art films, you know, he was as comfortable in art movies as he was in commercial cinema. And that's not an easy combination either. You know, you see somebody
and
who
that
does...
was the incredible thing about him, because when he worked in...
Go ahead, Kabir.
When he worked in art films, he virtually did it for the love of it, not for money. And that's what was so remarkable about him.
One of the other things common between you and him, obviously, is both stage and cinema, and there are not many who do both. Explain to us, what does it take to, you know, do both of those, because one doesn't have that much money?
Well, you know, it's not just film and stage, there's television too. There are three major forms of the performing arts, and each one has its own demands, its own skill sets, and its own limitations and advantages. I won't get into the complexities of what it is, what differences there are in acting in different mediums, because this is really a moment I feel we should dedicate to the memory of Om Puri, who was one of our brothers, one of our brethren. We shared so many values in life, so many wonderful jokes and so many wonderful evenings, that I just want to keep this moment in memory of Om for the wonderful human being and actor that he was, and a true human being with all his failings as well, and yet somebody to whom I could always give the warmest jappi and receive the same in return.
Tell us one such, interaction with him which will stay with you for the rest of your life.
You know, I can't, because Om was so outrageous in what he said that I couldn't possibly repeat what he said to me, or for that matter, what I said to him. But we did have a wonderful rapport. Not that we hung out in each other's homes. We always met at social events, at industry events, at film shootings. Yet, it's that feeling of, you know, you meet somebody after a long time, and if it's an old friend, you just pick up as though you'd met yesterday, even though it might be a year. And since Om and I trod the same boards here in England, abroad in America, we had many, many common friends, many, many common interests, and I think a great mutual respect for each other.
Sure.
I think of him as a great buddy, and I'm so sorry that he decided to pass on when there were so many wonderful years ahead of him.
And way too early. Mayank Shekhar is a film critic. He joins us on the phone line. Mayank, you've covered many film stars in your career. What sets Om Puri apart for you? We've lost Mayank, but Kabir, let's talk about the persona that he was on screen. You talked about, you know, the different kinds of roles that he did. It is very difficult. I remember seeing him in all those, the attire that he wore in the Jaane Bhi Do Yaaron, or then you see him in a very serious film. What does it take for somebody to be able to do such a wide array of cinema and in, you know, such ease?
Well, I think you have to have an innate ability for that. You can study certain techniques, you can study certain ways, you can study certain methods, but the fact is, at the end of the day, you've got to have that ability to be chameleon-like. And that, I think, Om demonstrated in remarkable ways, because even though, you know, when an actor plays a character, there's so much that the actor gives of himself to the character, and then the character also gives so much of himself to the actor, that eventually it's always a balance between the two. But Om managed to sort of bring authenticity to every role, which was very remarkable.
Sure, amazing.
Because it's not often that you get the feel of actors really living a role the way Om demonstrated with his craft and skill and sincerity.
Sure.
He was a committed actor,
Sure.
and he prided himself in the quality of his acting. And I think he was more than happy and delighted with the success that he saw, not only in India, but in Hollywood films as well, in British films as well, and the respect he got as a person to the last day of his life.
Sure.
He worked hard to earn that,
Sure.
and he achieved it.
Sure. Mayank is back on the line with us. Mayank, you've covered Om Puri, and you've certainly covered a lot of movie stars. Tell us the persona he was off screen.
Well, off screen, I can't think of someone so completely unaware of his own greatness. There was a quality that he brought, even in conversations over a drink, of course, which was where it seemed like he was very open to his life, to his issues, almost as if in a childlike sort of way. There was no distinction between a public life and a private life. Of course, that also got him into trouble once in a while, but that was a quality that sort of endeared him to a lot of people who came into contact with him, which is one rare. And I guess it also comes from the fact that, when you shattered so many rules that gatekeepers have over what, who becomes successful or who gets corners a fair amount of attention and fame, he'd broken all those rules. I mean, there is a swagger that comes with it, a very devil-may-care kind of attitude. He spoke as he saw, and it was remarkable. Never really took himself seriously, which is usually not so easy to find in the world of show business anyway.
Also joining us live is Lilith Dubey. Lilith, give me a sense of the person that you knew in Om Puri. Lilith, can you hear me? Well, I think we're still trying to establish that connection.
Hello?
Yeah, hi Lilith, can you hear me?
बहुत soft है voice.
Lilith,
Hello?
can you tell us of the person you knew of Om Puri, who he was and what he brought to the world of cinema and the stage?
Well, I wasn't lucky enough to have, worked with Om as much as I would have liked. In fact, we used to always say that whenever we bumped into each other or I got a chance to spend a little time with him, that how we would so love to work together. Very strangely, about 20 years ago, we shot for a pilot, which never got approved. But we spent a lot of time together, and and my memories of even that short span of 3-4 days that I spent, even that has left a lot of, had a huge impact, because he had 3-4 remarkable qualities, aside from being a wonderful actor. And as a co-actor, I can only say that he had 3 or 4 hallmarks of an actor which I think I admire the most. One is great spontaneity, effortless, natural acting, which came from a very truthful and a very honest place, which everyone could, even a lay audience could immediately sense. And with that, a very endearing personality. He was so down to earth. He had none of the star trappings that you associate with someone who's so humongously talented and successful, has won so many awards. He wore his fame, his talent so lightly that people just, and he was really a son of the soil. He was a basic, simple, earthy guy. Loved his food, loved his drink, loved to crack a joke and talk about everything, And even the acting, there wasn't this thing about, the whole process and this and that. Whatever he did, it just came, like a lot of great actors, very, very effortlessly. If there was a process or a craft, you didn't see it. And I love that about him. And I love the fact that as an actor, again, as a co-actor, I admired that hugely in him, that he could straddle all forms. He was very good at comedy, he was excellent at tragedy, he was wonderful at emotion. He had this amazing presence on screen, that face which was so powerful, and a searing intensity, which I think very, very few actors are blessed to have. So he was quite remarkable professionally, and personally he was just so easygoing. So after we met, then he stayed in touch, and we kept talking about working together, and we never got to, till strangely about a year and a half ago we did a film which no one here probably has even heard about, called A Million Rivers. It was by not a young but a relatively young director called Sarah Singh, and she made it like a painting. She called it a piece of art. And I was so sad because we were in the same film playing husband and wife, slightly estranged. So his scenes were, without me, and my scenes were without him. And it was a very, very arty kind of film, which has gone to all the museums, opened at the Victoria and Albert to an ovation and things like that. And we often talked about the movie, and this is what I mean about him. He did such a wonderful job in it. And he kept telling me, but I have no clue what the film was about.
Let me
and I used to say, what do you mean? So he said, I love doing it. But even in a film like that, a small independent film, he was so committed. He was so committed even in that.
Let me bring Kabir in here.
I think that was what he was.
Let me bring Kabir in here. Kabir, let's talk about the legacy that he leaves behind here for a lot of the next generation movie stars to, look at, emanate in some ways.
Well, in all honesty, one of the greatest legacies he leaves behind is that he is telling people, it doesn't matter what you look like, it doesn't matter what your disadvantages are, or seeming disadvantages. If you have a fire in the belly, you can go out there, act, be recognized, get recognition, awards, appreciation. Everything's possible if the fire burns in your belly, which it did for him. But what I remember most about him, beyond all his cinematic legacy, which we all know, from Ard Satya to Janabi Do Yaro to Tamas, to all these films that remarkable films that he did. We know all that, but what resonates for me is his Punjabiyat. Beyond it all, beyond the star, beyond the husband, beyond the friend, if you wanted to touch Om, you spoke Punjabi. And then no matter what you were talking about and what you were disagreeing about or fighting about, it all bonded together in being a Punjabi with him. He just loved his Punjabiyat, and that's what bonded us greatly, with a big japhi.
Also joining us is Shojit Sarkar, director of films like Piku and Vicky Donor. He also produced a recent hit film, Pink. Shojit, what are some of his movies and roles you'll remember the most?
Oh, there are many, the most important one was where, he's evidently remembered by all of us, and especially the film fraternity, is Janabi Do Yaro. Tamas was another one where we remembered he was there. And then East is East, I think it's another one where really he was very good. So there are Merchant Ivory films he was absolutely there in all those films. And let me tell you, we were proud of him because he was our initial and the first actually an international actor from India. And he was there all over the place, in European films and Hollywood films. So these are the films that I'm really proud of.
What was Om Puri like behind the cameras? Who was he in real life for you?
Let me tell you his background a little bit. He is from, I think, National School of Drama. He was a dear friend of Nasiruddin Shah. So the cinema was changing at that time when we joined in the 80s and the 70s. The kind of powerhouse content-driven cinema that was coming up at that time was fighting with the conventional song dance Bollywood films. So we grew up at that time, so our sense of pride was the films where Om Puri would act or Nasir would act. So you can understand that, they were talking about my language of that time, the kind of films they were doing, there was absolutely woven with realism of our everyday life. They were hardcore, hard-hitting films. So that's why I think, and in person also, he was absolutely a very normal, like a loud, full-hearted Punjabi man. So so that's what I loved about him. He was clear, his voice. So that's why I think we could relate to him.
Lalit, Kabir mentioned that, when you look for a movie star in today's day and age, it's about how you look and, your body and all of that and, six-pack. But Om Puri was none of that. He was this average guy on the street with all of his, what would not classify as regular movie star. But he was able to carry himself off so well, like Kabir mentioned. Explain to us how there are not that many who can actually make their way through.
Sorry?
There are not that many people who can make their way through cinema.
Yeah, but that's why when you were talking about the legacy, this what Kabir said. In fact, I was just telling someone else this, who had called also about him, that considering he was a man of ordinary looks, ordinary height, and of course he had the most amazing voice. He always reminded me of Richard Burton, that lovely, deep, strong, gravelly voice, very distinctive, very powerful. And he had enormous presence. You see, this has nothing to do with anything. There's somebody like Bill Nye, who's not a good-looking man at all, and so many other actors who looks have nothing to do with it. You just light up that screen when you're on it. You can't take your eyes off certain people. They're so riveting, and they have such a lot of presence. So Om had that, but I think that talent, which was so, unstoppable, the fire was there, of course, but also the talent was enormous. It burst on screen. Someone was telling me how, in a film where he had just a role for like a very short role, how it was such an impactful role. So whether it was Hollywood or whether it was, Western cinema, Indian cinema, alternative cinema, very small independent cinema, wherever he was, and he was one of those actors who, when in on the job, committed wholly, completely, and otherwise he was just so down to earth. His feet were planted on Punjabi ground, as Kabir said. And I think, that is something that will inspire millions of actors. Nawazuddin, Irfan, all are of that ilk, they have shone because of their work and their presence on screen. Sure. That's what has inspired people like them, and so it will for generations to come. And the man, I knew him so little, and maybe not as much as a lot of people who are speaking today, but whatever I knew of him, he would call occasionally and he would just want to have a natter, as Kabir said, in Hindi and Punjabi, and talk about everything else. He hardly ever spoke about roles of cinema or anything like that. That he was one of the most endearing people that I have known, really warm and endearing, and spoke his mind, exactly about whatever he felt.
Absolutely.
So there was such honesty. That kind of honesty also shone in his performances. He was a very honest actor, very truthful actor.
Kabir,
so I think the looks.
Kabir, let's.
Yeah, I'm just going to wind up in saying that looks are hardly what's important, really, when you have that kind of enormous talent.
Absolutely. Kabir, your closing thoughts on this chapter turn in the kind of landscape of Bollywood and absolutely world cinema?
Well, obviously obviously at one level there's great sadness at having lost a colleague, a compatriot, a friend. But when you look at the range of his career, you realize that he has been almost a role model of how to perform certain kinds of roles and the sincerity with which he played them. Secondly, I think it is remarkable, because I've been on this journey myself, for a Bollywood actor to go abroad and be recognized in foreign films and get great roles. I mean, you know, you think of him in City of Joy, you think of him in East is East, and in India you think of him in so many wonderful, iconic roles in a sense. Ardh Satya being one of them, Tamas being another great performance. So there is a legacy of a body of work that is left behind that will be hard to equal in its genre. And I think he's a role model for actors in terms of the kind of range of performances that they can render on screen. And I think he'll be remembered for long for the variety of roles he did and the great sincerity with which he executed them.
Thank you, Kabir, for joining us. Thank you, Lilette and Shujit and Mayank, for joining us on this tribute to the great actor called Om Puri. This is surely an incredible loss to the international film fraternity. That is all we have time in this edition of Gravitas. Thanks for joining. News and updates continue on WION after the break. Good night and good luck.